So here we are having this conversation that we really wish we didn't have to have, but it's sort of the national conversation about television at the moment, so we thought we'd weigh in. The bury your gays trope.
And we're drinking some Darjeeling. Lots been said about this. Between 20 and 30% of all gay characters on television in 2016 were killed as of April. I'm going to tap very briefly into like the history of this trope.
And just as a caveat, neither of us are gay, so this doesn't affect us personally in that particular way, but the pain of our friends does affect us
and
personally.
Family is very, very real. Going back to Carol came out last year, which was a really important example. As a novel, when Carol was released, it was in a time when you could have gay people, they just couldn't end happy. So Carol was one of the first novels that went against this and said, fuck you guys! Yeah, so it was very iconic at the time for women reading it. Many of them didn't realize that was a possibility for their own lives. And that's why this trope is important, because it reinforces the idea that gay and lesbian and transgender and asexual and bisexual and questioning and genderqueer people don't deserve a happy ending, and that's not true.
Even to go so far as to say they can't have it, that it's impossible, which is so heartbreaking.
That's a repercussion a lot of people face, even just coming out to their families. Their families don't necessarily disapprove of that lifestyle. They want their kids to be safe and happy, and they're afraid that that's not possible.
Yeah, you even see this almost as a sub-trope where you see family members saying, oh, I wish they wouldn't be gay, just
because their life
would be easier.
Yeah, so I guess we wanted to examine how this happens. Like, how did 8 separate television shows at the beginning of this year go, this is a great idea, we're gonna do this?
My reaction to the idea that our way of doing it is special, which is always what you hear, right? When you see a trend that's a damaging, negative trend and you sort of identify it, everybody who's been a part of it, regardless of how, wants to defend their way of doing it. And the way that I thought of that was the death of 1,000 paper cuts, where if you're being killed by 1,000 very small things, what you really don't want to hear is someone saying, oh, I gave you a paper cut, but it was with a get well card.
It's still a paper cut.
It's still contributing to the mass pain. Because here was the thing, I struggled too. I read a book last year that deals with imperialist homophobia in a very dark and specific way by killing huge swaths of LGBT individuals. And as a straight person, I read this and I was like, oh, but I like this book. And oh, they're doing some really interesting things. The protagonist is LGBT and she's trying to bring down the system from the inside, but they're still dying. And I have the privilege to be at war with myself about that. I could still be like, but I like the book. And I have to recognize that huge populations of people just don't have the ability to look past all those deaths and say, but look what the book is also doing.
I think it goes back to who are you making feel comfortable. For that book, you're not necessarily making a queer LGBTQ audience comfortable.
Even though you're ostensibly centering them and a story about an LGBT woman of color, you're still not taking their side in a way that's demonstrative, which the author is a straight white man.
Which is also not to say that storytelling is to make people feel comfortable. Obviously, storytelling, good storytelling, will emotionally connect you to the story. It will make you feel emotions, but it should make you feel like you can trust the author. And sometimes when you're doing that, you're cutting off an audience that will no longer have trust with you. I think in writers' rooms, especially shows where nothing is off limits and anyone could die at any time, the writers feel that way, but a lot of us don't feel that way watching the show anymore. Because when I watch shows where that is supposedly true, like Game of Thrones or like The Walking Dead or something,
It's not true at all.
It's not really that true. And I think this comes from within the room feeling about what's possible. Who is it possible to kill? I think there are certain characters it doesn't even occur to the writers to kill. And by certain characters, I mean the white straight male characters that tend to be the protagonist of the show. Ned Stark was actually very daring because he was the white straight male we thought protagonist.
But at the same time, he was written as a sacrificial lamb.
Yes.
He was written with the point of killing him from
Yes.
the beginning. And
Yes.
just because we're conditioned to read a white straight man from the beginning of the story as the protagonist, we were shocked by that.
And no other character on Game of Thrones that has that position has been killed. Like, Jaime Lannister's still around.
Tyrion will never be
Tyrion's not
killed
gonna
ever.
get killed. Jon Snow, no one believed he was dead for real.
Yeah. So, like, even on shows where you think everyone is fair game and anyone could die at any moment, that's not true. That's never going to be true. There are
Yeah.
always going to be characters they'll save no matter what.
And there are other characters that the writers see as more possible. They'll mask this as, like, it's more heartbreaking. They'll write into the episode we really feel for those characters so that it hurts the most when they die. They're still killing them. The Walking Dead went on a huge run of killing off its black characters. So I think it's changing that mindset of what's possible.
It's changing also your point of view, because if you want to kill the person with the most impact, that's going to hurt people the most, you are talking about killing someone that the audience doesn't identify with.
Yes.
So it's about changing the perspective and saying, okay, but some portion of the audience does identify with this character, and maybe it's a bigger percentage than we think.
Maybe those people get their characters routinely killed, and maybe they need a break for
and
like
maybe
several
the
decades.
people
though.
who you as the writers identify with instead are the people that should maybe experience that sometimes.
Well, and how life-changing is that? That really changes it around. When we have a character that we're in their perspective and they get killed and we don't have that entry point anymore, that is very jarring as an audience member. It's a huge narrative risk. It would take a lot of work to do, but
that's unique.
Yeah.
That's special and different. And killing your gays now at this point is not special and unique and different. It doesn't make you edgy.
Or make your gay character the entry point.
Shocking. So we're gonna redirect Supply with an Army, some sadly deceased ladies that really hurt us very deeply to have lost.
I would love to keep reading Tara from Buffy.
I feel
on
like
her
that
lot.
was maybe my first experience with this trope.
It's like a textbook version of the trope.
She was maybe the first lesbian on television that I encountered. Definitely the first one that I had an emotional connection to. I mean, she's an introvert and she's bookish and she's like the normal one in a sea of like
She has no...
abnormality. We are gonna arm Charlie from Supernatural, who was for a long time a really shining exception to this trope.
And to the trope that Supernatural has of killing off all the female love interests because she was not a love interest.
But then she had to die anyway because sadly she was gay.
I would love her army to be all of the other dead women
dead
from
women.
Supernatural as badass zombie
All
women.
coming back. They could totally beat the Winchesters.
Absolutely. That's a serious finale I
That
can
is
get behind.
a series. So then we're gonna elect Delphine Cormier from Orphan Black. She would make like the best cabinet minister for science.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'd love to know what you think. So send us some comments or questions. We love questions and we love making videos answering questions. So please do.